There was a millionaire named Richard, a man who had everything money could buy, a grand mansion, luxurious cars, and the finest clothes. Yet despite all his wealth, his life was not complete. He had 3 children, triplets, who were born blind. And from the moment they entered the world, Richard felt a deep mix of love and helplessness. Every room of his mansion was filled with light, but his children could not see it. Every garden, every painting, every sparkling chandelier was something they could not enjoy, and this created a quiet sadness in the house. Richard loved his children with all his heart, but his busy schedule and endless responsibilities kept him from spending enough time with them. The triplets, named Emily, Ethan, and Ella, grew up in a world of darkness, but they were bright in their minds and hearts. They laughed, played, and listened to every sound around them with great attention. They could hear the chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, and the footsteps of servants long before anyone could reach them. Their other senses were sharper than most children, and they learned to navigate the mansion with surprising skill. Despite this, there was always a sense of longing in their lives, a feeling that they were missing something very important. Their parents tried everything, doctors, therapists, and special gadgets, but nothing could give the children sight. Richard often stayed awake at night, thinking about how different their lives could have been, how they could have seen the sunrise, the colors of the flowers, the smiles of their friends. Each night he prayed silently, hoping for a miracle. The triplets, unaware of their father's worries, often wondered why the world appeared so mysterious and why everyone else could see what they could only imagine. Emily loved listening to stories about faraway lands. Ethan loved music and could play simple tunes by ear, and Ella loved touching and feeling textures, imagining how beautiful the world might be. The mansion staff adored the children, but even their kindness could not fill the emptiness that came from not seeing the world around them. Richard's wife, Margaret, was loving and caring, but she too struggled with the reality that her children were blind. She would spend hours holding them, telling them about the colors and shapes she saw, painting vivid pictures with her words. Yet deep inside, she knew words could never replace real sight. The triplets were happy in their own way, always laughing, always curious, and always eager to explore. Yet Richard felt that his wealth meant nothing if it could not give his children the most basic gift, the ability to see. One day, Richard invited a group of specialists to the mansion, hoping that maybe a new treatment or a new therapy could bring hope. Doctors examined the children, ran tests, and spoke in scientific terms, but the outcome remained uncertain. Richard felt frustration and despair, but he refused to give up. He told himself that somehow, some way, his children would see the world. The mansion, though beautiful, often felt empty, as if the walls themselves mourned the children's blindness. Richard tried to make everything perfect for them, filling their rooms with soft toys, bright sounds, and musical instruments, hoping to compensate for what they could not experience. He even hired tutors to teach them about the world, colors, and everything they could not touch. The triplets grew up intelligent, kind, and cheerful, but there was always a part of them that longed for a glimpse of the world everyone else could see. Richard watched them closely, noticing their small triumphs, like when Emily identified a flower by touch, or when Ethan recognized the difference between a piano and a violin just by hearing. He admired their resilience, but also reminded him of what they were missing. Nights were the hardest, as Richard would sit by the window, staring at the moonlight, thinking about the life his children deserved. He dreamed of the day they could open their eyes and see him, see each other, see the world in all its beauty. Little did Richard know, life was about to change in ways he never imagined. A mysterious figure from the streets, an old beggar, would soon enter their lives, and everything that seemed impossible would start to transform. The triplets' world, once filled only with imagination and sound, was about to be touched by a miracle that would change their lives forever. And in that moment, Richard would learn that sometimes true miracles come not from wealth or science, but from kindness, hope, and the unlikeliest of people. Life in the mansion continued much the same after the triplets' routine of laughter, learning, and exploration. Yet something unusual was about to happen that would change everything. One chilly afternoon, a beggar appeared at the massive gates of the millionaire's estate. His clothes were worn, patched in places, and his hands were rough and dirty. Yet there was something about his eyes, bright, kind, and full of wisdom, that made him stand out. The guards were suspicious and tried to send him away, but he did not leave. Instead, he lingered at the edge of the garden, observing the children playing with their musical instruments and toys. Emily noticed him first, her hands pausing mid-motion as she felt a strange warmth in the air. "Who is that?" she asked Ethan and Ella, her voice curious and soft. Ethan tilted his head, listening to the faint shuffling of the beggar's feet. "I don't know, but he doesn't seem like the others," he replied. The triplets were naturally drawn to him, sensing something special about the stranger. Unlike the other visitors who came and left quickly, the beggar stayed at a distance, silently watching. The next day, he appeared again, this time sitting by the fountain in the garden, humming a tune that made the children stop and listen. The sound was simple, but it carried a strange power. Emily reached out her hands as if to feel the music, and a smile spread across her face. "He sings like magic," she whispered. Their curiosity grew stronger, and soon they found themselves running to him whenever he appeared. The millionaire, Richard, was confused and uneasy. He had never seen a beggar behave with such confidence or command attention without speaking. Yet, something in the way the triplets reacted made him hesitate to send the man away. Over the next few weeks, the old beggar became a frequent visitor, not asking for food or money, only spending time with the children. He told them stories from places they could only imagine. Stories of mountains that touched the clouds, rivers that sparkled in the sunlight, and fields full of flowers of every color. The triplets listened with wide smiles, feeling as if they were seeing everything he described, though their eyes could not witness it. What amazed Richard the most was how the beggar could connect with the children, how he seemed to understand their fears, joys, and dreams. One day, Emily asked, "Can you teach us to see like you see?" The beggar chuckled softly. "I cannot give you sight with your eyes, but I can teach you to see with your hearts and minds," he replied. This intrigued the children, and they eagerly began spending hours with him, touching objects, listening to sounds, and learning to imagine the world more vividly. The beggar was patient, gentle, and kind, never forcing anything, yet guiding them step by step toward understanding the world in a new way. Richard watched silently from a distance, feeling both hope and doubt. How could a beggar, a man with nothing, have such power to influence the lives of his children? And yet, the more he observed, the more he realized that the triplets were changing. They laughed louder, explored further, and spoke about colors, shapes, and light in ways they had never imagined before. It was as if the beggar had unlocked a hidden part of their minds and souls. The children began showing small signs of awareness beyond what anyone had thought possible. Ethan could now distinguish the sound of a bird from a distant car. Emily could feel the warmth of sunlight and imagine its golden color, and Ella could sense the shapes of objects just by touching them. Their progress amazed the servants, tutors, and even the doctors who had long given up hope. Richard could not deny it anymore. Something extraordinary was happening, something that money, science, and all his wealth had failed to achieve. The triplets were responding to the old beggar in ways that were almost magical, and though he never revealed his past, his age, or the secrets he carried, the beggar became an inseparable part of their lives. A bond stronger than any material possession was forming, built on trust, curiosity, and the purest form of love. Little did Richard know that this mysterious man, often overlooked by the world, held the key to the miracle his children had longed for, and the mansion that had once felt empty and silent was beginning to fill with laughter, hope, and a sense of wonder that promised something truly miraculous in the days to come. The bond between the triplets and the old beggar grew stronger with each passing day. What had started as curiosity slowly became friendship, and friendship turned into something deeper, a connection that neither money nor privilege could create. Emily, Ethan, and Ella eagerly awaited his visits, sometimes running barefoot across the garden just to reach him. The beggar, who the children now called Grandpa, had a way of making ordinary moments magical. He would tell stories about distant lands, but not just through words. He would guide their hands over objects, let them feel the textures of leaves, flowers, and stones, helping them see the world in ways their eyes never could. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the mansion windows, Grandpa held a small, smooth pebble in his hand. "Feel it carefully," he said. "Notice its weight, its shape, and imagine what it looks like. What colors do you think it carries?" Emily rolled it between her fingers, imagining a shiny golden surface. Ethan imagined it silver with tiny cracks like lightning, and Ella pictured it as soft green moss. Their imagination blossomed under his guidance, and for the first time, Richard saw them not as blind children, but as explorers in their own world. He watched silently from the balcony, his heart heavy with emotion, seeing his children laughing, imagining, and learning with a man who had nothing but gave everything. Grandpa never treated the children like they were different, never pitted them, and never spoke of their blindness as a limitation. Instead, he encouraged them to explore, to question, and to dream. "You have your own way of seeing," he told them one day, "and sometimes that way is stronger than ordinary sight." The triplets adored him, and in return, they shared everything with him, their laughter, their secrets, and even their small frustrations. He listened patiently, offering advice in the simplest words, words that carried wisdom far beyond his humble appearance. Meanwhile, Richard began to notice subtle changes in his children. They were calmer, more confident, and their senses seemed sharper than ever. They could identify birds by their songs, footsteps by their rhythm, and even slight changes in the wind. Grandpa had taught them to pay attention, to feel the world with their whole being, not just with their hands. The mansion staff noticed it too, and some whispered about the miracle that was quietly unfolding in the house. The old beggar, however, never took credit. He simply smiled, saying, "I'm just a friend who shows you the way. The real power is inside you." One day, the triplets asked him, "Will we ever really see the world, Grandpa?" He looked at them with kind, tired eyes and said, "The world is bigger than what the eyes show. But if you truly believe, and if your hearts are open, one day you will." Those words stayed with them, echoing in their minds and hearts. The children began experimenting with their senses, touching objects more carefully, listening more intently, and even describing colors and shapes with increasing detail. Their imagination and perception grew as if guided by some invisible hand. Richard could hardly believe his eyes. His children were blossoming in ways he had never imagined, and he realized that wealth, medicine, or luxury had nothing to do with it. It was the beggar's patience, wisdom, and love that were shaping them. One evening, as the sun set behind the mansion, casting golden light across the garden, Emily asked Grandpa to tell the story of sunset. He described it vividly, and Emily's hands moved as if painting the sky. Ethan hummed a melody to match the colors, and Ella traced imaginary shapes in the air. The triplets were creating their own version of the sunset, a beautiful world born from imagination, guidance, and love. Richard watched from the window, tears filling his eyes. He realized that this old man, a beggar to the world, had done more for his children than all the riches he possessed. Grandpa's presence had awakened something inside them, a spark of hope and possibility that no doctor or teacher had ever ignited. And though he could not yet see with his eyes, the children were beginning to see more clearly than anyone else in the mansion. That day, Richard understood a truth he had never truly realized before. Life, love, and miracles often come from the unlikeliest places, and sometimes the people we ignore hold the power to transform everything. The triplets were no longer just children struggling with blindness. They were explorers, dreamers, and soon they would be ready for the miracle that was patiently waiting for them. The days grew brighter in the mansion, though the triplets still could not see with their eyes. Something had changed. However, a quiet energy filled the house, sparked by the old beggar who had become their guide, mentor, and friend. Grandpa had begun to teach the triplets in ways they had never experienced before, showing them how to sense the world with more than just their hands and ears. Close your eyes and listen, he said one morning, as the children gathered in the garden. Hear the wind, the leaves, the tiniest sounds around you. Imagine their shapes and colors in your mind. Feel the world even if you cannot see it. Emily tilted her head, concentrating on the rustling of the leaves, picturing them as emerald ribbons dancing in the wind. Ethan felt the warmth of sunlight on his face and imagined golden beams stretching across the garden. Ella ran her fingers over the rough bark of a tree, imagining the pattern of lines and curves that made it unique. Grandpa encouraged them to trust their senses and their imagination, teaching them to notice details others might overlook. The world is full of colors, textures, and sounds, he said softly. You only need to feel it to see it. The children practiced these exercises daily, slowly building awareness that was sharper than anyone had expected. They began describing objects with amazing detail. The curve of a flower petal, the color of a butterfly's wings, the pattern of pebbles along the fountain. Richard, the millionaire, observed them with growing amazement. He could see that the children were not just imagining. They were perceiving in ways that seemed almost magical. His skepticism melted away, replaced by awe. He realized that Grandpa was not just teaching them skills, but unlocking something deep inside them, a hidden ability to truly experience the world. The servants, too, noticed the difference. The children were more confident, more curious, and full of life. They explored corners of the mansion they had never dared to venture into, guided by touch, sound, and Grandpa's gentle instructions. One afternoon, Grandpa brought a small box filled with colorful stones and asked the children to sort them by weight, texture, and imagined color. Emily ran her fingers over each stone, imagining a rainbow of hues. Ethan carefully tapped each one, listening to the differences in sound, and Ella traced their shapes, feeling the curves and edges. Slowly, they began describing colors with a precision that amazed everyone. This one is soft blue, Emily said confidently. And this one feels like a warm orange, Ethan added. Their imagination was merging with perception, creating a new way to experience the world. Richard felt a surge of hope. Perhaps there was a way for the triplets to truly see one day. Grandpa never pressured them or made promises. Yet every lesson seemed to be a step closer to something greater. The triplets also began showing empathy and understanding beyond their years. They comforted each other when they felt frustrated, celebrated each small success, and shared their discoveries with joy. Grandpa smiled at their progress, knowing that their hearts were as open as their minds. You are learning to see in ways most people will never understand, he told them one evening. Your eyes will catch up soon, but your hearts are already there. Richard could hardly believe it. His children were growing in confidence, skill, and imagination, preparing silently for the miracle that awaited them. Even the mansion, once quiet and heavy with unspoken sadness, now echoed with laughter, learning, and excitement. There was a rhythm to their days, a sense of hope and purpose. The triplets were discovering the world through Grandpa's guidance. And in doing so, they were discovering themselves. Every exercise, every story, every lesson was building something extraordinary inside them, something that no wealth or medicine could provide. And Richard knew that in this humble old beggar, he had found a teacher, a guide, and a miracle, quietly transforming his children day by day. With every passing moment, the mansion grew brighter, the children grew stronger, and the air seemed charged with the promise of something miraculous, something that would soon change not just the triplets' lives, but the entire world they had only imagined. Weeks of patient guidance, careful exercises, and endless encouragement from the old beggar began to show results that no one could have imagined. The triplets were no longer simply imagining the world. They were beginning to sense it with startling clarity. Emily could distinguish between the subtle variations in the sunlight streaming through the windows. Ethan could recognize distant footsteps before anyone else noticed them. And Ella could now trace shapes and textures so precisely that she could almost see them with her mind. The beggar watched quietly, his eyes twinkling with pride, never boasting, never taking credit, But knowing that the moment they had longed for was drawing closer, Richard could hardly contain his emotions as he witnessed their progress. He had spent years hoping, praying, and trying everything science and wealth could offer. Yet it was this humble man, a beggar by the world's standards, who had opened their minds and hearts to the world in ways he never thought possible. One afternoon, Grandpa brought the children to a quiet garden filled with flowers. "Today," he said, "I want you to focus, feel, and imagine everything as clearly as you can. Let the world come alive for you in your mind." The triplets closed their eyes, following his instructions. Their small hands hovered over the flowers, feeling their petals, inhaling their fragrance, and listening to the faint hum of bees. Slowly, Emily whispered, I think I can see the colors. Golden yellow, deep red, soft blue." Ethan's voice trembled with excitement. "And I can see the shapes of the leaves, how they curve and move." Ella gasped. "I can feel the sunlight and the flowers together, like they're painting the air." Richard, standing nearby, could not believe his ears. Tears filled his eyes as he realized that his children were experiencing a form of sight for the very first time. A warmth spread through his chest, a mix of awe, relief, and gratitude. He ran to the garden, kneeling beside them, holding their hands and whispering, "Is this true? Are you really?" The triplets smiled, their eyes still closed, but their faces radiant with wonder. Grandpa chuckled softly. "They're beginning to see, not just with their eyes, but with their hearts and minds soon. Their eyes will follow." The breakthrough did not happen all at once. It was gradual, like dawn breaking over the horizon. But the moment the triplets described colors, shapes, and sunlight, it was clear that something miraculous was happening. Their laughter filled the garden, pure and joyous. Echoing like music through the mansion, Richard felt a surge of emotions he could not put into words. The years of worry, helplessness, and fear melted away, replaced by hope, love, and gratitude. He hugged his children tightly, feeling their small bodies tremble with excitement. "Thank you," he whispered to Grandpa. Though words seemed too small for what he felt, the old beggar simply smiled. His mission still quiet, still humble, but his heart full. The world is waiting for them, just as they are ready for it, he said softly. The breakthrough did more than awaken their senses. It awakened a new bond between father and children, between children and the world, between all of them and the man who had made it possible. That evening, as the sun set behind the mansion, painting the sky with hues of pink and gold, the triplets sat together, feeling the warmth of the last rays on their faces. They were still learning, still discovering, but for the first time, hope had a visible form, a sense of possibility that was brighter than anything Richard had ever owned. He looked at Grandpa and knew that this miracle was only the beginning. There would be more challenges ahead, more learning, and more growth, but in that moment, everything felt right. The mansion, once filled with silence and longing, now buzzed with life, laughter, and the quiet magic of a family transformed. And the old beggar, unnoticed by the world but unforgettable to those whose lives he touched, quietly knew that his work had brought them closer to the true miracle they had always deserved. Even after the first breakthrough, life was not without its challenges. The triplets had begun to see in ways they never imagined. Yet their journey was far from complete. Some days were filled with doubt, frustration, and fear. Emily sometimes cried when the colors she imagined seemed to blur in her mind. Ethan became impatient when he could not identify sounds or shapes as quickly as he wanted. And Ella felt frustrated when textures and sunlight did not match her expectations. Grandpa noticed these moments and knew that real growth often came with struggle. "You cannot rush a miracle," he told them one afternoon. "The world has many layers, and each one takes time to understand. Patience is the key." Richard watched silently as the children grappled with these emotions. Feeling helpless at times, he wanted to intervene, to use his wealth to make things easier. But he realized that this was a lesson they had to experience on their own. The mansion, which had once been a place of comfort and routine, now became a classroom for perseverance. Every corridor, garden, and room presented new opportunities and challenges. The triplets stumbled, fell, and sometimes argued, but each struggle taught them something about resilience, empathy, and self-belief. Grandpa encouraged them to embrace their failures as much as their successes. Mistakes are not the end, he said. They're steps on the path to seeing clearly. Sometimes, what seems like a setback is actually a leap forward. Not everyone outside the mansion understood what was happening. Some doctors and specialists doubted the progress, saying the triplets would never fully regain sight. Certain neighbors whispered that the millionaire was wasting his resources on impossibilities. Yet these doubts only strengthened the bond between the children and Grandpa. They learned to ignore judgment, to focus on themselves, and to trust the guidance they had been given. One particularly difficult day, Emily refused to practice, saying she could not see properly. Ethan tried to comfort her, but ended up feeling frustrated himself. Ella's hands trembled as she touched objects, unsure if she was imagining correctly. Grandpa knelt beside them, gently taking their hands. "Look at your hearts, not just your minds," he said. "Feel, believe, and trust that your inner vision will guide you. One day, your eyes will follow." Slowly, they calmed, understanding that the struggle itself was a vital part of their journey. Over the following weeks, the triplets faced many small failures, misidentifying colors, confusing textures, or missing a sound. But with each mistake, they learned something new. Their perception sharpened, and their confidence grew. Richard saw a change in himself as well. His patience, humility, and understanding deepened as he witnessed their struggles and triumphs. He realized that true wealth was not money or possessions, but the ability to nurture, guide, and love. The breakthrough moments were no longer rare events. They were woven into every day, appearing in small victories. A correct identification of a flower, a melody recognized, or a shape felt accurately. Yet the challenges kept them grounded, reminding them that miracles required effort, belief, and resilience. One evening, Grandpa brought them to the edge of the garden at sunset. "The world is full of obstacles," he said, "but you have already learned to face them. The path to seeing clearly is not straight, but winding, and every turn teaches you something." The triplets sat quietly, feeling the breeze, the warmth of the sun, and the gentle sound around them. They had learned to trust themselves, each other, and the guidance of the old beggar. Despite the difficulties, a sense of hope and determination filled their hearts. Every challenge they overcame brought them closer to the full miracle that awaited them. The mansion, once silent and heavy, now hummed with life, learning, and persistence. And Richard, standing nearby, understood a truth he had never fully realized before. Real transformation did not come easily. It demanded courage, patience, and unwavering belief. Yet when achieved, it shone brighter than anything else in the world. Grandpa smiled quietly, knowing that these challenges were shaping the triplets into extraordinary children. Children who were ready not only to see the world, but to change it with the hearts, minds, and vision they had cultivated. And though the journey was not over, the family felt a growing certainty that the greatest miracle was closer than ever. The long-awaited moment finally arrived. A day that had been quietly building through months of guidance, patience, and unshakable belief. The triplets, Emily, Ethan, and Ella, had grown stronger, wiser, and more confident under the old beggar's care. And now the culmination of their journey was at hand. Grandpa led them to the grand garden, sunlight pouring over the flowers, trees, and fountain. The air was warm, filled with the soft hum of nature, and a sense of anticipation hovered over the children. Richard stood nearby, heart pounding, unable to hide the mixture of hope and fear in his chest. He had witnessed their small triumphs, their struggles, and their incredible growth. Yet he wondered if the ultimate miracle could truly happen. Grandpa knelt before the triplets, placing his hands gently on their shoulders. "You have come so far," he said softly. "Your hearts and minds are ready now. It is time for your eyes to follow." The children closed their eyes, breathing deeply, feeling the world around them with every sense. Emily's fingers traced the petals of a flower. Ethan's ears captured the distant chirping of birds, and Ella felt the sunlight warming her face. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly. Emily opened her eyes, a small glimmer of light reflecting in her pupils. She gasped, overwhelmed by the sudden burst of colors, shapes, and depth she had only imagined before. I can see, she whispered, her voice trembling with awe. Ethan opened his eyes next, and a wide smile spread across his face as he took in the world for the first time. The golden sunlight, the green leaves, the blue sky, and the vibrant flowers. Ella followed, tears streaming down her face as the world revealed itself in ways her imagination could never capture. Richard ran to his children, lifting them into his arms, unable to contain his tears. "You can see. You can really see," he exclaimed, overwhelmed with joy. He hugged them tightly, feeling the miracle he had long prayed for finally unfold. The old beggar watched quietly, a gentle smile on his face, knowing his role had been to guide, not to take credit. "The world is yours now," he said softly. "But remember, seeing is more than just with your eyes. It is with your heart, your mind, and your spirit." The triplets looked around in wonder, every detail more beautiful than they could have ever imagined. They ran their hands over the petals, touched the fountain's sparkling water, and marveled at the vibrant hues of the garden. Laughter and tears mingled as the family celebrated together. The mansion, once filled with quiet sadness and longing, now echoed with joy, warmth, and an unbreakable bond between father and children. Richard knelt beside Grandpa, gratitude filling every word he spoke. "Thank you. I can never repay you for this, for everything you've done." The beggar shook his head. "There is no repayment needed. Only love, kindness, and the courage to believe. That is enough." In the days that followed, the triplets explored the mansion and the gardens with a new sense of wonder, discovering the world in ways they had only imagined before. Colors, light, shadows, and shapes fascinated them. Yet they never forgot the lessons Grandpa had taught them about patience, observation, and inner vision. Richard found himself transformed too. He understood that wealth alone could never bring happiness or miracles. True magic lay in love, faith, and the guidance of someone who believed in the impossible. The triplets' lives were now filled with possibilities, every corner of the world waiting to be seen, touched, and experienced. And the old beggar, who had once been just a stranger at the gates, had become the architect of a miracle, a silent hero whose humility and wisdom had changed everything. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light over the mansion, the triplets sat together, holding hands, marveling at the beauty surrounding them. Richard joined them, tears of joy in his eyes, realizing that the journey had been more than about sight. It was about love, patience, resilience, and the extraordinary power of human connection. The miracle was complete, yet its impact would last a lifetime. The triplets could see, but they had also learned to feel, imagine, and understand the world with a depth few ever experience. And the millionaire, once worried and doubtful, now understood that the greatest treasures in life are not measured in gold, but in the moments, love, and miracles that touch the heart. The mansion was filled with a joy that had once seemed impossible. Emily, Ethan, and Ella could finally see the world with their own eyes, yet the lessons they had learned from the old beggar remained in their hearts. Every morning, they ran into the gardens, laughing and marveling at colors, shapes, and light, but they also stopped to feel the wind, listen to the birds, and appreciate the little details Grandpa had taught them to notice. Richard watched them with awe, realizing that the miracle was far greater than sight alone. It had awakened empathy, imagination, and love within them, making them extraordinary children in every sense. The old beggar, who had quietly guided them through this journey, decided it was time to leave. His mission was complete, and he knew the family now had the strength, knowledge, and love to continue growing on their own. One sunny morning, he walked to the gates of the mansion. Emily, Ethan, and Ella ran to him, hugging his worn coat tightly. "Will you come back?" Emily asked, her eyes shining with curiosity and gratitude. Grandpa smiled, his eyes reflecting pride and warmth. "I will always be with you, in your hearts in your memories, and in the lessons you carry forward. Keep seeing the world, not just with your eyes, but with kindness, courage, and love. Richard approached and took the old man's hands, feeling the strength and wisdom within them. "Thank you for everything," he said. "You have given my children more than I could ever give them." Grandpa shook his head humbly. "I only showed them the way they already had inside them. You, too, played a part in their growth. But remember, kindness has a power greater than wealth or fame." With one final nod, the old beggar walked away, disappearing into the streets, leaving behind a family forever changed. In the weeks and months that followed, the triplets used their newfound vision to explore the world. But they never forgot the lessons of patience, observation, and empathy. They learned to help others, to notice those in need, and to share what they had with humility and love. Richard, too, changed, opening his home and resources to help children with disabilities, creating programs that encouraged imagination, creativity, and inner growth. He realized that true wealth was measured not in money, but in the lives he could touch and the hearts he could inspire. The mansion, once a place of luxury and silence, became a hub of laughter, learning, and hope. Children from all around visited, learning to explore the world with all their senses. Guided by the example of the triplets and the lessons taught by the old beggar, Emily began drawing, capturing the colors she had only imagined before. Ethan played music, composing melodies inspired by the world around him. And Ella became a storyteller, describing the beauty she felt with her mind and heart. The family often sat together in the garden, remembering the journey that had brought them here. They spoke of the beggar, whose humility and wisdom had sparked the miracle, and of the lessons he had taught, realizing that the greatest gift he had given was the ability to see with more than just eyes. Years later, the triplets became known for their compassion, creativity, and vision, inspiring countless others to look beyond limitations and embrace the world fully. Richard's heart was full, knowing that a single act of kindness had transformed not just his children's lives, but the lives of everyone they touched. And though the old beggar had vanished from their sight, his legacy lived on, in the laughter of the children, in the joy of discovery, and in the acts of kindness that spread far beyond the mansion walls. The story of the millionaire, his blind triplets, and the humble old beggar became a legend, reminding all who heard it that miracles often come in the humblest forms, that wealth alone cannot create change, but love, patience, and selfless guidance can transform lives in ways no one could ever imagine. And as the sun set over the mansion, casting golden light across the garden, the triplets looked at each other and smiled, fully aware that their journey had only begun. Yet they were ready, with hearts open, eyes seeing, and a spirit forever touched by kindness.